obviously one of the most important things from the subcommittee is the impact on small businesses. And I have a letter here that is from the American Coal Ash Association asking Administrator Jackson to do a formal review on the potential impacts on the ruling of small businesses that recycled coal ash has. I have another letter here from the EPA denying that request. Did the EPA ever survey whether the small businesses in the recycling industry would be harmed by Subtitle C designation of coal ash?
On my talk button. We did an evaluation of the small business impact to the industry that we were proposing to regulate under either option, Subtitle C and Subtitle D. We conducted extensive economic analysis in those areas to support the proposed rule. EPA analyzed the direct impacts on small facilities that are subject to the rule, the small power plants, 26%, and found no significant economic impact on a substantial number of small entities. Since we are not regulating beneficial use under this rule, consistent with agency guidance, these facilities were not included in our small business analysis. We welcome through this rulemaking process any cost and impact data and recommend that it be submitted during the comment period and for the record.
Thank you. So from the recyclers, there was nothing, no survey done when it comes to the recyclers.
Again, the beneficial use of CCRs was exempt and remains exempt under either proposal, so we did not do a specific analysis on the recyclers. We, as I mentioned, met with many of the recycling community and trade associations, including the American Coal Ash Association, right, and continue to receive their input and look for any specific comments and impacts through this rulemaking process.
Executive Order 12866 says that this analysis should include an assessment of all costs and benefits, including indirect cost. Why didn't the EPA use this ruling for more indirect recyclers to use this ruling under the executive order?
EPA conducted on the executive order, which is on regulatory impacts, significant analysis on the proposed rule. This included the estimation of direct costs to the utilities, ancillary costs to government, groundwater protection benefits to the public, avoided structural failure benefits to the public, the indirect effects on beneficial use, the indirect effects on electricity prices, and distributional effects on several groups, including small business, minorities, and low-income populations. There were several effects that EPA could not quantify for this analysis. For instance, EPA did not quantify the ecological benefits of this rule. Even for those effects, EPA discussed the issues qualitatively. To the extent that EPA did not evaluate any direct or indirect effects or was unable to quantify the effects for the proposed rule, we would welcome, again through the comment process and the rulemaking and for the record, the submission of any additional information or data to help us as we develop the final rule.
But that's allowing the industry to respond, which is great, and I think the industry will respond. But what about the actual the working of the EPA? I mean, it's part of the responsibility of the EPA to go and look at this indirect. It says all, and it's, you know, I mean, I have it capitalized here, and I don't know, it's probably not capitalized and underlined within the regs, but I mean, this is the impact of the recyclers. I mean, this is the small businesses. I mean, we're in a, and the reason I ask this so much is because you have two proposals, one under C, one under D, and they're quite broad and from one extreme to the other. Very loose regulations to little regulations from the federal government, and then very stringent regulations, and almost to the point that it's still under Subtitle C. That means that special waste is still going to be considered a hazardous waste. So I don't know about you, but I mean, if it's considered hazardous waste, it's under Subtitle C, then that to me is not going to, that will have a huge impact on the small businesses. So you have two proposals that are, in my estimation and others, is on opposite ends of the spectrum. And so often, I mean, we need to come to that common ground. And hopefully that's where we can get to today, is to come to that common ground. But I think it would really be helpful if the EPA would conduct that indirect cost to the recyclers, indirect impact to the recyclers going forward. Is that something that can be done during this period of time, or is it already past that during the public opinion that it can't be addressed?
Yeah. Again, we excluded beneficial use from the regulation under either C or D. We did look at indirect effects on the beneficial reuse from a bounding perspective, and I can get you some additional information that we looked at from that perspective. But certainly, any comments that are submitted either via this committee or through public comment process, we will look at and analyze in our final decision.
In the recycling process, especially in concrete, a huge amount, and I think the gentleman from Alabama and the ranking member also alluded to it, a huge amount of the coal ash is used in recycling back into cement and concrete. During this process and conducting the regulations and proposals that you have, was carbon emissions ever a part of how much savings and lower emissions based upon using this as a recycled product? And what is the, I mean, because it costs a lot of, there's a lot of carbon produced and energy consumed based upon the production of concrete and cement. And so was that ever taken into consideration during the process?
Yeah, we looked in our benefits analysis. We looked at both the carbon footprint reduction as well as the disposal capacity, energy usage. All those factors we looked at in our beneficial analysis, and those discussions are found in the proposal.
Why do you feel that there's so much discrepancy between the two proposals? I mean, I may be naive, but I mean, to me, it looks like it's pretty broad within the two proposals.
Yeah, I mean, the C proposal basically provides federal regulation with specific federal enforceability. The prime differences of the D regulation is the federal enforceability aspect. I mean, when but we want to consider comments on both, and both of them will require liners, both of them require groundwater monitoring, both of them require some form of corrective action in setting either a C or D proposal. It's really the enforceability issue, which is one of the key concerns but why we want to gather comment on both options. So, again, for the record, if during this national dialogue and national review of the rule, if we request, all interested parties to submit their comments on either the D or the C, and what their perspectives are and what the data is to support either C or D. The agency has not taken a position one way or the other on that.
Under Subtitle D, does the EPA have authority and direct regulations to regulate the CCB disposals?
As I mentioned, we have in the rule itself, we have extensive discussion on the differences and concerns raised between regulation under Subtitle D. Under Subtitle C, it's a full cradle-to-grave management process. The prime issue is the enforceability. The Subtitle D is enforced either through citizen suits or by the states that promulgate the Subtitle D regulations.
I went to the TVA site in Kingston and I certainly saw the amount of devastation. Is probably the best words to use, but most of that problem obviously was how they it was almost like stacking Jell-O. It was so wet when they were disposing of it into the sites that it was like stacking Jell-O, and at a certain point when the stack gets so high, something has to fall. And so I certainly saw the devastation and the environmental impact it's going to have for not just a couple of years, but probably a very, very long term to be able to see the impact of that. Hopefully we get a chance to ask some more questions, but at this point in time, I'll yield to the ranking member, Mr. Lukemeyer, for his